Local politicians in Austin have redirected some of the funding to the local police department toward other programs following demonstrations calling for the defunding of police. And Texas Governor Greg Abbott is not happy about it and is threatening any city in Texas that follows suit. Let's take a look at what Austin did, and then I'll give you the specific threats coming from the governor. The Austin City Council unanimously, meaning every single one of them, voted to cut its police department budget by $150 million after months of criticism over the killing of an unarmed Black and Hispanic man, the use of force against anti-police brutality protesters, and the investigation of a demonstrator's fatal shooting by another citizen. So how does this money get redirected? Where does it go? They're not just simply doing austerity here. The idea is, hey, maybe we're putting too much responsibility into policing, and maybe we need to fund other services in Austin that could really help lower crime, lower violence, and also hopefully lower instances of excessive force and police brutality. Of that $150 million that's being redirected, about 80 million in the police budget decreases comes from moving things like the forensic lab and the internal affairs office out of the department and into other areas of city government. Okay, let's just stop right there. I think that's an excellent idea because quite honestly, I don't like waiting for an autopsy that's gonna be done or forensics that's gonna be done by someone who has close, cozy ties with the very police department that's being scrutinized for excessive force. So I think this is a good idea. Another 50 million in police budget decreases might come from areas that are being reevaluated and might be removed from the department, like traffic work, training and recruitment within the agency. About 20 million comes from moving money to social services like violence prevention, food access, and abortion programs. So understand, of the $150 million that's being cut from the police budget, only 20 million of it is gonna go to services like violence prevention, food access, and abortion access programs. A larger bulk is gonna go toward kind of like outsourcing some of the responsibilities that were previously given to the police department, which again, just to reiterate, I think that there is a benefit to having some of these investigations done independent of the actual police department, including the forensics and possibly autopsies and things like that. So Aida, before I give you Governor Greg Abbott's salty response to this, I do want to get your thoughts on this move in Austin.
I mean, why wouldn't you want to defund the police investigating the police, right? That's what internal affairs is. It's the police investigating the police, and oftentimes they come back and say they didn't do anything, right? That's
right.
Why would you, and then when you talk about forensics, like I just found out that in the Sandra Bland case, the person who did her autopsy or her coroner's report was the sheriff, because in certain municipalities that the sheriff has the authority to declare the cause of death. So if she was murdered in that jailhouse, the person who said she wasn't murdered in the jailhouse was somebody who runs the jailhouse. So yeah, we should outsource those programs to people who don't have a dog in the race, right? That's what checks and balances are. You get outside organizations that's what they do. That shouldn't be negotiable. No, we cannot avoid corruption, but at least that's a step in the right direction. And I think that it is to do that. And listen, I don't want to hear, I'll listen to what the person who hates old people has to say, because I can't stand this man.
Right, so Greg Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick were urging people to get back to work, including elderly people in the middle of the pandemic. So they don't really tend to care about anyone's life, much less the lives of Black people living in Texas. But Greg Abbott didn't like this and issued a threat almost immediately after the city council in Austin voted to redirect funds out of the police department and into other social services. Let's hear what he had to say.
Austin, Texas has defunded law enforcement police in Austin, Texas, despite the fact, Sean, that over the first 6 months of this year, the city ranked #1 in the United States for the highest percentage increase in murders was Austin, Texas. And so we proposed a law yesterday that would apply to all cities in the state of Texas. If a city defunds law enforcement, they will lose the lifeblood of the revenue they receive from property taxes in Texas. What this does in English, it is going to defund cities and cities' ability to operate at all if they try to defund law enforcement. We, Sean, believe in law enforcement in Texas, and we are not going to allow a replication of the types of policies that we've seen destroy cities like Seattle and Portland and others.
Okay, so let me be clear again, because Abbott is intentionally misleading the public into believing that the funds that are being cut are specifically funds that help the police fight crime. No, that money is going to be cut from the police department, so the police department isn't investigating the police department when there are instances of police brutality and excessive force. That has nothing to do with keeping the public safe. In fact, the movement that's made by Austin here, I would argue, would keep the public safer, because then you would have an independent body that was funded to do the investigation into the police department or the specific officers who have been accused of carrying out excessive force. Again, that has nothing to do with like patrolling the streets. It has to do with ensuring that investigations are carried out in a way that increases the likelihood of justice, something that we haven't seen very often or at all when it comes to these cases. And we've been reporting on them for how long now? For years and years, and nothing changes. So I think that this move is smart. And then one other thing I wanted to just quickly mention, Aida, is so Abbott is threatening to continue collecting property taxes from the people living in Austin, but is saying that he will not then use those funds toward the people living in Austin. So then why would people in Austin pay their property taxes? Why would they pay their property taxes? I wouldn't pay my property taxes.
Because he wants to be able to keep vacationing with his family and living his life. Just think about the things that they're saying. He used Portland and Seattle as an excuse, but didn't use, is it Camden, New Jersey, where they defunded the police, their crime rate went down, and they're having a successful run with defunding the police. I think that if we properly defined what defunding the police would mean, I think the actual police officers would probably find some sort of relief knowing that they don't have to go out, they don't have to be deployed to go out and deal with people with mental health issues, and can go out and actually deal with crime. Because like in those cases where the police officers are deployed to go deal with people who are having mental breakdowns, and they end in fatalities because they don't know how to properly deal with that. I think that relieving the pressure of people who are already improperly trained, you spend more time in barber school than you get trained more to be a barber than you do to be a cop. That if you remove like some of these responsibilities that they quite honestly are unsuccessful at because they're not trained for it and they probably don't want to do it, it makes for a better ecosystem for everyone, right? So this whole, and then the other thing is like, it's like we talked about earlier, I'm tired of these white men who are in power having these temper tantrums because the American people do not want to stay in their place. Because people are awake now, and they're becoming more and more awake daily, and understanding that their money is being misappropriated, that people are abusing their power, they have more access to information, and they're understanding that they are the power of that's who we are in this country, that they are supposed to be reporting to us. So for him to say use Portland and Seattle as an excuse is to speak directly to the people in the South about the people in the West, because they're always trying to make the West as this liberal circus free for all of people who are not abiding by the rules and doing whatever they want. He said very specifically, Texas is an upholder of law enforcement. And those are code words a lot of times for people of color, Black people, marginalized people, how we keep you in place. And that's what law enforcement is for. When in reality, law enforcement is supposed to be to fight crime, protect its citizens, and look where we are. Is that happening? When you count the murder rate in Austin, are you counting the cops who are killing innocent citizens? Are you counting the incels who are sending bombs to people's houses and killing Black people and their families? When you're talking about the murder rate, who are you speaking of specifically? Because I'm sure that the citizens of Austin who are in terror, especially the Black and brown ones, don't agree with you.
Yeah, and look, it drives me crazy when people point to, like, let's say California as some sort of progressive utopia. The amount of corruption in California, I mean, the amount of wheeling and dealing that happens behind the scenes to create these giant, housing developments for the rich, which, by the way, just sit vacant and empty while homelessness continues to increase. I mean, we rely on prison labor to fight fires in California. California is on the surface maybe liberal, but you just do a little bit of digging and it's actually a conservative utopia when it comes to big policy issues that have the most impact on people's lives. Let's just keep it 100.
Los Angeles and San Francisco are your liberal points, and parts of San Francisco, because San Francisco has a lot of people who are out there gentrifying and terrifying Black people in their own neighborhoods. But if you think about Los Angeles, from San Diego all the way to the top, you go out to the Inland Empire, and it's very conservative. So when they start talking about Los Angeles, California, they're specifically talking about Los Angeles and Hollywood as if Hollywood runs the state of California. And we know good and well that Donald Trump would not have been governor of California if liberal people were really out showing up for the votes. It was those Republicans that showed up for this man because "I'll be back" is what they thought was an effective campaign slogan for the people of California.
Want to win a free electric scooter? Well, our partners at Aspiration and Zoom Electric are making it possible. All you have to do is head to tyt.com/greensummer for your chance to win.